another episode of the Dynamics Compass, where we interview the experts so you don't have to figure it out the hard way. My guest today is Kelly Mullican, CIO of Paragon Films, one of the leading manufacturers in the US packaging industry. Kenny has spent over a decade driving Paragon's digital transformation, leading projects like modernizing ERP on Dynamics 365, building advanced analytics for financial reporting, and strengthening cybersecurity across the organization. Currently, Kenny is at the forefront of bringing AI into manufacturing in a practical way. He is partnering with Microsoft and RapidScale on a funded AI assessment that uses real-time sensor data from Paragon's production lines to detect quality issues before they become costly scrap. The project is a great example of how mid-sized manufacturers can innovate AI without six-figure budgets. And in this episode, we'll unpack what it really takes to bring AI, data quality, and ERP modernization into a manufacturing environment, and what lessons can be learned from Paragon's journey. Thanks so much for joining us, Kenny, and sorry for getting your name wrong at the start.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Rory.
Yeah. Just for the audience to get to know you a little bit, could you share something that not a lot of people know about you?
Yeah, so here's one. We have a baker here in Tulsa named Kat Cox, and she's kind of a big deal. She has this bakery called Country Bird Bakery, and she uses locally sourced ingredients for making bread, pastries, a lot of this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
She's been recognized, her bakery's been recognized as one of the top bakeries in the country by New York Times. And recently, she was awarded the James Beard Award, which is kind of like the Oscars for the food world.
Yeah.
Well, found out was that she gives lessons in baking sourdough bread.
Yeah.
So took a Sunday off and went into her bakery and learned how to make sourdough bread. I mean, takes you through this whole thing where you start out with a starter, you make the dough, you do everything. By the end of it, you've got a loaf of bread, and you get to take the starter home. And so since then, quite a few times, I've made some really beautiful loaves of sourdough bread. So it's kind of a cool
Yeah.
thing, very different. It's not computer related. It doesn't use any real modern technology. I'm just baking bread that's really delicious.
Yeah. That's really cool, actually. Have you tried making the starter from scratch yourself, or you were able to just take it from your friend and
Just
live?
I use the starter, keep using the starter based on the past starter, but I did use ChatGPT to ask if I was to make my own starter, how would I go about it? And it doesn't seem like it's too difficult, but since I knew I had one that worked well, I've
Yeah.
just kept using that.
My wife tried it a few times and it keeps dying. Like, oh,
Yeah.
need to add a bit more water, or no, put too much, or need to let it rest a little bit longer. So
Uh,
it keeps dying. I make my own bread, but not sourdough. It's the next step. So I think that's really cool that you're doing that. And you enjoy the bread more if you made it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I do. And I found out one of the things we learned in that class was that sourdough bread is easier on your digestive system than other types of bread. So
I did
that's
not know
cool.
that.
People that have a sensitivity to gluten sometimes can handle sourdough bread better than other breads.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, another thing that people can learn today, apart from AI stuff. That's
There you
great.
go.
Thanks for sharing that, Kenny. So let's start with the hot topic. Your your personal AI journey didn't start with a board directive, like no senior told you, Kenny, look into this, but it came from curiosity and user adoption. Do you think that's the most realistic path for AI in manufacturing today?
I think it probably depends on the type of the company or the size of the company. My experience has been in mid-level manufacturing organization, and key initiatives typically are not driven from the board or from the senior executives. And especially something cutting edge like AI isn't something that I would normally expect a directive. You might get the questions where someone says, "We've heard about AI. Are we doing anything with it?" And you want to be able to answer that. But sure, in my case, it was just something so interesting, and it was so natural for me to jump in and start playing with it. Even as a hobby, before I had any use for it at work, I was already trying this stuff out. But then, it did come a time where it's gotten prevalent enough that people were seeing it. ChatGPT was in the news. You started to see Microsoft advertising their Copilot. Some of these things are already available. And so then we started having users who were saying, what is it okay to use? And which ones are we using here? And so it did actually start to be, like you said, a ground roots effort to say, what should we use? And then even in our cybersecurity training that we do every year, one of the little bits in it said that there can be dangers in using AI. You could expose your company data. Be sure and check your, company handbook for, using AI. And so then we had the general counsel saying, hey, do we have a company handbook mentioning the AI? What's our policy on
Yeah.
AI? So you start to get hearing it from different directions.
Yeah. Do you think any CIO should have that curiosity?
Well, it's hard to imagine being an effective CIO without being curious. I've seen it happen before where people tend to just say, you know what, I've got my job, I've got my things, I'm keeping things running, but that's not my style. I always feel like the most effective CIOs are interested in the technology with a grounding in, you've got to be looking for what's best for the company.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy with that curiosity also to get into trouble if you're not careful and just saying, here's this great technology. We got to do it. We need to get in there and do this thing. Yeah. Well, what's the ROI for the company? I don't know, man, but it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That can go that way as well. When you and I had an earlier conversation, you mentioned Copilot felt half-baked at first. What lessons did you learn from those early disappointments, and how should other leaders manage expectations around AI tools?
Yeah, well, after my introductory talk about baking, I think it's funny talking about half baked for Copilot. There's a little bit of debate among my peers about this. Some people say it seems like Microsoft is just putting alpha software on us. They're throwing these things out there. They don't even work yet. They're just making us do their debugging for them. And I take a little bit different view of that. While it can be at times frustrating for end users to have features that don't work that well yet, something like AI, if they waited until it was perfect, you just never get there. It's just this technology that's moving so fast. I'd rather that they get it in there early and let the user community be a part of determining how best to make it work. Otherwise, they're just doing this in this, incubator, this vacuum of what do we think users will use and how they will use it. And then once we think it's already fine, we put it out there. So I think that's okay. But you just have to go in with this expectation. And so both as a technologist, I have to understand what can it do and what does it not do yet? Where is it headed, but where is it still falling short? And then to also do some expectation setting with the users that I'm inflicting this technology on. If they think that it's all going to do all this stuff for them and it's just going to work right out of the box, they're going to be disappointed with the first time they try it. And so like you said, when I very first started using it, I had bigger expectations of what it was going to be able to do. I thought, hey, if you're inside of an Office 365, Microsoft 365 application, you should be able to do anything that app can do. And you start talking to it. And more often than not, I got the reply back, I don't know how to do that, but I can tell you how to do it, or I don't actually have any access to your data. But if I did, here's what I would do. So it's sort of still in that state. I think it's doing way more than it did a year ago.
Yeah.
But there are still places where it seems to be a bit disconnected. For instance, one of the things that I tried to make it do was, hey, I want to think through creating a PowerPoint, and I've got this document here. Can you turn it into a PowerPoint presentation? And it says, sure, I can do that. Just upload your document. Oh, where's the upload? Oh, it didn't have an upload feature yet. Well, once I finally got the text pasted in, it said, okay, here are your slides. Great, put it in PowerPoint. Oh, well, I don't actually have access to PowerPoint, but you can copy and paste it into PowerPoint. That's kind of where some of those things happen. But what's cool about it is that Microsoft's moving so fast. They keep working on this, that just about the time that you tell the users it doesn't do that yet, you get an update and it does. And so, it's kind of like the weather in Oklahoma. If you don't like it, wait around a little bit. It changes in an hour.
Yeah. Do you give your team like the freedom or even a direction to, hey guys, start exploring this, like take an hour of your week or a few hours just to explore and see if you come up with ideas? Because I've heard of
Yeah,
other people doing that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, on my team, like on the IT organization, we definitely have people doing that. And I'm encouraging them to use it any way that they can come up with. We've got people that are using it to help them write code or how to do, PowerShell scripts or deploy things into Azure or in the help desk, how to automate some requests that are coming in and make it quicker to get answers back to them or to organize their thoughts around it. But even outside of our IT organization, we've encouraged people to just play with it and try things. And so, it was so exciting to have someone in our finance organization who was working in Excel and just started asking Copilot, write me a Python script that will do this predictive sales analysis and use multiple methodologies and describe how you got there. And next thing you know, it has built this predictive analytics with our data.
Yeah.
And I remember she said, this one method that it chose is closest to what we've been using for prediction. And that's when our CFO said, well, here's an idea. Instead of just letting it, picking the one that matches what you already thought it should be, instead keep all of those predictive models and then, call it a range and
Yeah.
say, if this one was going a little bit low and this one was going a bit higher, then you can give predictions that have a range, and then you can back it up with, and these are the methodologies that got us to that range. But, it's something that she had the financial analysis knowledge to understand the topic much more than I would have. And yet she wasn't a Python coder and she didn't know how to build that herself. And in minutes, she was doing something with the advantage of Copilot in Excel.
That's really cool. That's a great example.
Mhm.
Uh, you would want someone to still check the code in the end, but if the outcome is close to what C already had, then that must be pretty accurate already.
Exactly.
That's really good. With a lot of manufacturers still treat IT as a cost center, not a revenue enabler. How did you identify that live process monitoring on the shop floor was the killer use case that could actually get executive buy-in?
Yeah. So the whole concept of IT as a cost center is something that I don't know what it's going to take to get past that. It's something that just comes from a different mindset in manufacturing, where a lot of the leaders are definitely technically minded. It's not that they're not thinking about technology, but they're just focusing on what they believe the important technology is in manufacturing. The manufacturing engine itself, the manufacturing lines, or
Yeah.
the specific plastics formulas or automation of a line, that's what they're more focused on. And so it's harder for them to see how IT plays a part in that, because so often in the past, IT was more there for providing the back end for the financial system. It's something that you needed to have, but it was harder for them to see. But how does that actually generate revenue? How does that actually help us be competitive with our, in the industry? And so when it came time to find a project that I could really build a groundwork for developing AI on, I wanted to find something that would resonate with the executives all the way up to the board. And that meant that it had to be something that they could really comprehend, something that they would be talking about, that they would find interesting. And so I thought, the best way to determine that is to go meet with people who are working in the research and development of the engineering of the products themselves. So I met with our head of the R&D department and just said, let's just brainstorm. He already got it that AI could be powerful, and he had started using Copilot, and he saw a little bit of the capabilities. But I wanted to pick his brain about what type of projects would really resonate with leadership and could actually have a real identifiable ROI. And so we talked through several ideas. And by the end of the conversation, we had settled on this one. And it was just this concept of, you know, when you're making the product, the testing of that product usually happens after the product has been made. Now, they may take some of the product that's come off the line and they run tests on it. And they find out, ooh, this isn't quite meeting our specifications. They might even have some data that is being collected from sensors on the line that within a short time or in retrospect, they can look at it and say, what was it about the the settings or the monitoring that could identify, what went wrong. But they had already for several years had this vision of a real-time monitoring that was taking hundreds of points of data from that manufacturing line, from the extruders, from the rollers, from the motors, all these different areas of it, collecting that data and in real time comparing it against a model to say these numbers and the way that they've trended for the past, let's say 10 minutes indicate that something is amiss. And they already had in mind an idea of what that could look like, but they needed the AI engine to do it. And so that's how we got to the idea. And whenever the head of R&D, Tom, said, I can sell this. This is good. Then I knew that we had a winner. And it's going to resonate more to our executive leadership when the idea is coming from someone in the operations group as opposed to just, from IT.
Yeah.
It's something that, just like if someone from sales comes up with an idea and says, hey, IT, help me build this thing, that sales VP is going to be able to sell the idea to the CEO more than the CIO is. So,
Yeah.
It's just kind of one of those realities. You've got to partner with the people who are working in an area that resonates with the leadership.
Yeah. So you've taken a very targeted approach there. You already knew that to the senior execs that they mainly care about the technology around production line. So you went to look for something in that area where you could apply AI because you knew it would be easier to get the attention of the senior execs. I think that's very smart.
Yeah.
Do you think that will help you in later, like, hey, I have another use case, but it's not production line, it's something else. Do you think it will be easier to get by?
Yeah, sure. This was kind of the catch-22 that I had from when we first started figuring out how are we going to use AI, because we kind of all agree that you don't just use technology for the sake of technology. It's not, hey, this seems like a cool thing. Let's go see if we can figure out any way to make, force its fit. It was more like we believe that AI has the capability to do some amazing things that would help us. What problems are we trying to solve that AI could be a good fit for? And so several companies had come to us and said, we want to do a pilot project with you, and it's only going to cost X. And to them and to some companies that didn't seem like very much money, seemed like sort of a cheap project to get started on. But for my size company, that was the sort of numbers that required going to the board hat in hand and asking for funding for a project.
Yeah.
And I knew that I would not be successful without being able to show, hey, this is a real ROI that we're sure that we're going to get. So we needed at least one project like that to be successful that then shows a real ROI as a benefit. So, I think it's important to find that first one, to start as small as possible and to pick something that you really believe that you've got a strong chance of getting an ROI on, and it not being one of those ones that you hear about of whatever they said. I think that MIT report said 95% of AI, pilot projects show no ROI, which I kind of question those statistics anyway, but when you get executives hearing them, they're a little bit worried to go throwing money at something that's just going to be a failure.
But that's just one stat, and there's always context around that stat.
Right.
That needs to be given as well, because just that stat looks scary indeed. Yeah, I read about that, and the context makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Next question that I have for you. Data grounding came up as a critical success factor. Getting AI to actually understand your products and processes. What advice do you have for other CIOs trying to move from generic AI to company-specific AI?
Yeah, this is a big one. And this is where I believe some of the hype around AI comes in. Like, I don't believe that the capabilities of AI are overhyped. What I believe is that is being overhyped is the ease with which AI is going to solve your problems. You kind of get this feeling from what you hear that all you have to do is install this stuff and just point it at your SharePoint, point it at your SQL server, and it's just going to like go out and figure it out and magically come back with insights.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody has that tool. I haven't seen that personally. Every time that I've tried it, other than simple use cases like, sure, you can create a Copilot, you can create an agent and feed it your company handbook and say, okay, now ask questions about the company handbook. And it's just going straight in there and answering back with fairly simple things about, how much vacation do you get and who do you need to, who do you talk to get, permission for your days off, something like that. But if it's actually requiring to understand your data, that's where you actually have to have good data and you have to have good understanding of that data yourself. And you have to have it organized in some way that you can teach the AI about that. And that's, I think, the part that is both misunderstood by a lot of people, but then is also a barrier to the people who do understand it because they say, but how are we going to get there? We don't have that. We don't have good data governance. We don't have a good data dictionary. Boy, by the time we got all of that, the AI revolution will have passed us by. So that's why one of the things that I've been doing over the past couple of years is trying to put things in place that will make it easier to bridge that. So one of the things that I hear often is having your data in a place that the AI can access is important. Having it in a bunch of spreadsheets, that's not a very easy way to give the AI access to it. Having it in some sort of organized data lake in something like Fabric, Microsoft Fabric. I'm sure that other companies have similar sorts of things, but for the Microsoft products, Fabric seems to be the place that is suggested. Okay, well, we didn't have a Fabric capacity, so that was something that we worked on getting set up with some of those types of tools.
You
Other
already,
things are you can use a lot of things. Oh, did you want to interject there?
yeah, sorry. You already, before Copilot's introduction, you were already looking at Fabric because you knew something was going to come up where you were going to need it?
Yeah, and it was both, it was a combination of things. It became one of the best ways to get information out of our D365 ERP system was to get it into Fabric, to use it for analytics and for our data warehouse. And so we knew that we needed it for that. But we also knew that it was coming, that having access for AI would also be something that Fabric would be powerful for. So we just made a real concerted effort to start figuring out how do we get Fabric set up? How do we use it? What are the use cases where it makes sense? Because we do still have on-prem SQL Server, but we're still trying to figure out at some point, how do we move more and more of that stuff into the cloud? We've got cost considerations, but then you've also got ease of being able to get to things considerations. So yeah.
And then once that's all in the right place, Copilot or AI can access it easier, and that then helps with having more company-specific AI solutions. Without the data properly in place, your AI is not going to give you any ROI, so you can't use it properly.
Right. At least in any kind of scale, like I said, you can do smaller things and individuals can, I've often had people say, just point it at this point it at your SharePoint library and you can do some things with that. Point it at this Excel spreadsheet that you have in OneDrive and you can do some things with that. And
Yeah.
that's definitely a good place to start. I mean, it's wrapping your brain around what it can do and how it can do it. But then when you get into the more sophisticated use cases that really, get into that idea of letting it loose on your company's data, you want to have a more thoughtful approach that may go beyond what you have capabilities of in your own company, especially a small IT department like ours. You may need to have outside resources that can come in and help you build that data framework that can then be accessed well from the new AI technologies.
So it sounds like any company that hasn't really started on their AI journey should start with their data, getting their data in order, quality and cleaned up and stored in the right place before
Yeah.
even looking at AI.
Absolutely. It's critical if you want to get to what most people want to do with AI, because even when we rolled out Copilot, one of the first things when we were asking for feedback was, this is really cool. And I think it'll be really great when I can let it loose on our data, on our company information. That's when it'll really make a difference compared
Yeah.
to just, it's the LLM and it knows a little bit about everything. But once it really can understand the things that we do, and I can start asking questions that it has that context, that grounding, it gets so much more powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. So manufacturers in the mid-market often don't have multi-million dollar AI budgets. Based on your experience, where should they start?
Yeah, I felt like that for us, the best place to start was with those tools like Copilot. Because we already are on Microsoft 365, we're all using Teams, we're using Outlook, we're using SharePoint, we've got things in OneDrive. It was just sort of a no-brainer to extend that to Copilot. And through our Copilot proof of value project, we were able to show that each user was going to get a return equal or greater than what we were spending, the $30 a month or so per user for a license.
Yeah,
That was kind of easy. And so I think that is the best place to start because it starts to at least give people the ability to use an AI that is safe, that is in their own environment. They're going to use AI individually anyway. I see a lot of CIOs doing everything they can to shut it down, block this, block this, block this. But at the end of the day, if nothing else, people have their phone on 5G and they're connecting to something and they're going to use, they're going to find some way to use AI. And so
yeah,
giving them an option that says, this is AI that we feel we can have some control over, we can help you to be able to use company data and keep it protected and not have it just end up on who knows where. And so that's the best place to start. But then from there to start thinking about, so how can you do a small project that proves the capabilities so that you can get the next one and kind of grow from there. I think if you try to boil the ocean, if you try to do too big of a project, you're going to spend a lot of money and be more likely to be one of those that ends up with a failed project, or at least a project that at the end of the day, it's hard to show where it was worth spending that much money for what you got from it.
yeah. What you said earlier, that it's easy to show them the return of the $30 on Copilot per user. I heard this is a year ago though, but that was actually a reason why companies didn't want to go to Copilot yet. Like, oh, now I have to pay extra for all the users. It didn't stay. That argument didn't stay around that long, but it was a reason for some
Mhm.
companies to be reluctant with the adoption of Copilot or be a pioneer
Yeah,
with it.
well, and that, to be honest, we have not rolled it out to every user. You can be a little bit selective and say who are the knowledge workers who could benefit from it, because we do have users who aren't really on their PC very much. They're working in the plant, they're doing maintenance, they're traveling, whatever it is that they're doing that maybe wouldn't take advantage of it. So instead of just saying kind of like, well, everybody gets Microsoft 365, doesn't necessarily mean every one of those would benefit from having a Copilot license. And so
Yeah,
we've been a little bit more judicious about rolling it out to people who will take advantage of it, who kind of can show that they're going to use it for something that would be helpful.
that seems like the right approach.
Mhm.
Next question. If another CIO came to you today and said, I want to explore Copilot or AI in my manufacturing business, but I don't know where to start, what would be your first piece of advice?
Well, kind of like what we talked about here, you can start with things like Copilot, but if you actually are talking about what sort of projects that you would put some resources behind to do something a little bit more than general use case Copilot, I think the most important thing is twofold. One is you've got to start with education. You can't know where AI is a good fit unless you understand how AI works and what it can do. And so Microsoft has great resources for getting certifications. You can go through all these online classes for free that help you to understand, what is an LLM? How do you use it? How can you use these APIs? How can you use the Azure resources that are available for tackling this AI technology? And then even on the more business side, what can it do, and what are the use cases that would be useful? Because ultimately what you want to get to is identifying a business need that AI is a good fit for. That's the thing I keep coming back to and hearing from so many people is, instead of saying, what's your AI roadmap, or what is your AI, policy for this, it's got to be more about what problems are you trying to solve, and is AI a good fit for it? Because there are some problems that really don't need AI. They are just a matter of automation, or there's something that really needs to have, custom code developed, or that there's just a turnkey product to be bought for. So, don't think you got to try to solve everything with AI, but looking for those problems that have been difficult to solve without AI, or that you find out that other companies have solved well with AI, and then say, okay, great. That's a project that would really make a difference for this company. It would make us more competitive, or it would help us to sell more products, or would save a significant amount of money that would, cut our costs, improve our profits. Look for those type of opportunities, and then, like I said, start small, take something scalable, and see what you can do. And then the other very important thing that I've found is, don't do a proof of concept that's just a demo. I think that's one of those things that maybe results in those 95% of pilot projects. If it's only a proof of concept and doesn't actually end up getting put into production, you aren't going to have any ROI on it. It's just going to be an idea. But if you can make that first project actually be something that can go into production and immediately actually be being used, then you can already show ROI on it. Whether you spent any money on it, or whether you managed to get somebody else to, to fund the pilot, either way, when you can show how this is making the company money, or how this is saving money by getting something into production, then you're gonna, it's gonna make a lot more difference at the board, as well as the fact of, now you've already got something in place that you can build on. And the next one is incrementally less work, because a lot of times there's just a lot of framework, a lot of tools, a lot of skilling that has to be done just
Yeah.
to get that first project. And then the others, a lot of times it's like, great, we've already got that. Now it's just extending it into this, or adding it to more manufacturing lines, or to another use case that uses some of those same technologies. And each one of those could be, less cost for an incremental benefit.
Yeah. So yeah, starts with educating yourself.
Mhm.
There's a lot of free resources out there. Get educated, understand what it can do, because only then can you start identifying where you could apply it. But the people closer to the problems that could be solved with AI would not be the CIO, right? Those would be people closer to the ground. Should
Exactly.
should there be a directive that they should be educated on AI as well, so they can have the ability to recognize problems and think, oh, I should talk to my CIO now because I think we can solve this problem with AI. Or yeah,
Yeah, I think it definitely is helpful. Whether or not I would ever get a directive for that, I don't know, but I think there's enough interest from them anyway. And this is something I've already seen start to happen, that people that are completely outside of IT are in a way becoming we get a little bit scared of shadow IT, but sometimes I get excited by it. If I know that someone who's completely outside of IT is going and they're learning, they're trying it, they're experimenting, they're even getting into areas that might involve a little more technical things, like they have to do a little bit of scripting or coding, or they have to use some of those tools to build things. I'm encouraged by that, because once they get it, they're going to be much more able to say, hey, here's an idea that I have. And that's where we start looking at, okay, either sure, you can build that, or maybe, hey, maybe that may be outside of your capability to do yourself. But hey, let's work together on this. Use your idea, use what you've already done on proving your idea out, and then we'll work together to help bring the right tools and meet that need. But definitely having people get it and understand AI that are outside of IT will make my job way easier in the long run than every time me having to say, well, you've got that idea. Let me go off and think about it and see whether I can, solution it.
yeah. Do you think, I'm not a CIO? Do you think AI will become the biggest topic CIOs will spend their time on?
It seems like it's heading that way, although it's going to be hard for it to match cybersecurity. Um,
Yeah,
Cybersecurity is one of those, maybe not that people are spending a lot of time talking about, but it's only getting worse because of AI, worse and better. So AI can be
yeah,
used to combat the cybersecurity nightmares, but it also is being used by the bad actors to do,
yeah.
to
In
to bring
in
more threats
scale.
than they ever had before.
Yeah. which is that was kind of what I was thinking as well. Cybersecurity, now you have CISOs because it's such a big portion. You think that will happen with AI as well? There'll be a chief AI officer.
Well, I know some companies are already doing that. It depends on what you're doing. I think in a manufacturing company, less like you might have, people in the IT organization that are focused on AI as a technology, just like you might have experts in ERP or data science. But I think AI is just one of those things that it's a technology, it's a tool that it's there. How it gets embraced, we've yet to see.
Yeah, Kenny, I think there's a lot of gold here, a lot of information useful to other CIOs or senior execs in the manufacturing space. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your story and your insights. Could we say here, if anyone has questions or wants to reach out to you, like I did this and I found you very approachable and you responded really quickly. If anyone wants to pick on your brain, like your industry peers, can they reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. Be glad to.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all this information. And yeah, looking forward to seeing the success of that AI funded AI assessment that you're doing with Rapid Scale and Microsoft.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Rory.
Yeah, take care, Kenny. Thanks for watching this episode on the Dynamics Compass podcast. We decided to launch this podcast after having spoken to a lot of people in the community who seem to be looking for answers to the same questions. So then we decided, why don't we find experts in the market that have the answers, interview them, and then release that information for free to help everyone progress their Microsoft Dynamics journey. So we hope that you found this video very informative and helpful for you to continue your journey and keep moving forward. If you would like to hear about any other topics, please write to me on LinkedIn. Email me, Rory at thegoodtalent.co, and we'd be happy to have a look. We'll look for the experts that have the questions, have the answers. We'll interview them, and it will be freely available to you. Again, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for your support as well, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.